Your Free to Go is sponsored by Milburn Men's Clothing, where top athletes shop for sharp, tailored style. And whether Marc and I are in the studio or the courtroom, Milburn dresses us for success. Mention YFTG and get 10% off at Milburn Men's Clothing, which has been providing the finest in men's clothing and suits since 1946. Call 651-645-2922 or visit www.milburn.com.
Welcome back, folks, to You're Free to Go, another episode. I'm here with my partner in crime, Guy Fronstin.
Good to see you, Marc. Always
good to see you.
exciting.
And we have an exciting another episode, another round for you folks. Today we're going to be talking about comical moments in the courtroom. And Guy, I know you want to lead off with one of your initial forays into the courtroom.
I do. And you know, Marc, when we were talking about this topic, you know, we're going back a lot of years and a lot of things came to mind. We probably each have 100, and we'll go through a few today, and maybe in future episodes we'll drop one in here or there. But it's certainly a cool topic, I think, and I think our listeners will enjoy it too. The first one I want to talk about is, believe it or not, my very, very first trial. I'm right out of law school. I get hired as a prosecutor, and I've got my caseload. And on day 3, I actually have a trial. It's a DUI. So I'm now a prosecutor, remember. I'm working for the government, for the state of Florida, bringing this case to court, prosecuting the defendant who was charged with DUI. And I get up and as you know, it starts with, after jury selection, an opening statement, right? Boy, I worked so hard on this opening statement. I'm still that student, you know, like in studying for a final exam. I'm so excited. My first trial, I'm looking good. I've got a brand new suit that I got for law school graduation and everything. I was so excited. I deliver a Clarence Darrow opening statement. It was worth, you know, a standing ovation. It was so good. And at the very end of my opening statement, so this is now maybe 15 minutes into my career as a lawyer, I look at the jury and I say, talking about this DUI, and at the end of all the evidence that you hear in this trial, if I were you, I'd vote guilty.
Oh my God.
Remember, I'm a prosecutor at that time. I want them to vote guilty, right? If I were you, after hearing all this, I would vote guilty. The prosecutor, the defense, they jump up and they say, Judge, you know, objection, golden rule violation. And I look over at that prosecutor, and the judge says, granted, approach. And I'm looking around like, wait a minute, golden rule?
What's the golden rule?
I was magna cum laude in law school. I never heard of golden rule. What did I miss that day of school? And honestly, I had perfect attendance, so I knew I never missed that day of school. Like, golden rule? Who's ever talked about golden rule? We approach the bench. The judge looks at me and says, Mr. Fronstin, you should know you can never put yourself in the shoes of a jury. And I said, what do you mean? He said, you said if I were you. That's putting yourself in the... He says, I have no choice now but to grant a mistrial. So in my very first 5 minutes of practicing law, where I thought I just gave the best opening statement in the history of the world, I had a mistrial. The judge was thanked for their service. They were free to go. My client wasn't. And the judge says, call up a new jury. We're starting in 5 minutes with a new trial.
Well, you know, what's interesting about that, and we've talked about this before, and as you know, I've taught law school as an adjunct professor in trial advocacy. I don't think law school really prepares you for the actual practice of law. To me, I think it's an admission ticket.
Right. You know, we have talked about this, and I agree. And you know our good friend Gary Lesser, who was the president of Florida Bar recently, and I pushed him so hard. I said, Gary, why don't you make it a requirement for all Florida law schools that you must do an internship in a law school? Doctors do residencies. Like, make lawyers do a residency in a law firm, in the prosecutor's office, wherever it may be, in a law firm type environment before they can take the bar exam. Because they teach you in law school how to pass the bar exam, basically. They don't teach you how to practice law.
No, it's sad, but it's a true statement. Now, also, I don't think law school has to be 3 years. Right. But don't get me started on that.
Well, that's true, too. By the way, Gary Lesser was a great Florida bar president. If he weren't, I would vote for him again if he ran again.
But another plug. We're doing a lot of plugs for people lately.
Come on, Gary, come be on our show one of these days. We'd love to have you as a guest.
Well, that was some embarrassing moment. You could call it what's comical about it is that you didn't know one of the most essential things that happens in a courtroom, and you screwed up a completely great opening statement. And boy, you must have felt like
I was embarrassed. I was,
Embarrassing.
yeah.
Well,
I thought I
something
was going to get
similar.
fired, actually.
Something similar to that happened to me in my first trial as a prosecutor.
Unbelievable. There's also in your first trial.
Yeah, my first trial.
Maybe I thought I was the only one in the world that this happened in my first trial, but
no.
maybe there's a lot of us out there. Let's
Yeah.
hear. Let's hear.
Well, my first trial as an actual prosecutor working in the DA's office in Brooklyn. I actually was in a trial bureau at the time, but I wasn't yet trying cases. I don't know what the reason. I guess you had to be there for a certain period of time. And one day in the morning, around 11 o'clock, 10 o'clock in the morning, frantically, the bureau chief comes over to me and says, have you ever tried a case yet? I said, well, I was a student prosecutor and defense attorney in a criminal clinic at Georgetown, so I did try cases, but never as a real lawyer.
Right.
And never any serious case. He said, well, that's going to have to be good enough because Goldman is sick and the judge will not give us a continuance and everybody else is tied up. And we're going to have to try this case or drop it. It's an attempted murder case. Your witnesses are sitting over there on the bench.
Wow.
And you're picking a jury at 1 o'clock in the afternoon.
Which is not unusual as a prosecutor. They literally hand you a file and say, "You get ready, you're picking a jury. They're on their way up to the courtroom now." But what is unusual is to have an attempted murder case right out of the gate.
And I said, please tell me it isn't Judge Suglia, because Judge Suglia was famous for eating young lawyers for breakfast.
Yes.
He said, well, it happens to be Judge Suglia, and I'm dying. So I prepare this thing the best I can. I figure I'll get it as I go. I'll take the first day picking the jury, and that night I'll learn more about the case. It was really frantic. The pressure was enormous. So I get to the courtroom, and I go to the prosecutor's table, and I take my brand new Samsonite briefcase, and I put it on the table, and I open it up, and I start taking out my case files, my folders, and I'm putting them down, and I'm organizing them. And then I look over, and I see the defense attorney sits down. He's an older gentleman, probably younger than I am now, but then he seemed ancient.
Right.
And he's taking pill bottles out of his briefcase, which is on the table as well. And he's taking pill bottles, and he's lining up pill bottles. And what is this, a pharmacy? I don't know what was going on. And I look over, his defendant, his client is sitting there. And the judge takes the bench, and announces, counsel, please announce your appearance. We announce our appearance. And then he looks over at me. He says, Mr. DA, move your case. And I look, my briefcase is on the table. And then I look over, and defense attorney's briefcase on his table. So I don't know what to do. He says, Mr. DA, move your case. And I'm looking again. He's not saying anything to the defense attorney. He's got pill bottles on the table, too. And finally he says, Mr. DA, I'm not going to tell you again. Move your case. So I pick up my briefcase and I put it down on the ground. The courtroom erupts in laughter.
Oh.
It was an unbelievably embarrassing moment. And he says, Mr. DA, we start off our cases by saying that the people of New York hereby move our case to trial.
Oh.
Nobody had bothered to tell me
that in law school, right?
Nobody had bothered. So you can imagine now. Thank God the jury wasn't there.
Oh, yeah, that would have been a problem.
Because if the jury was there, I don't think I would have shown up
Right,
the next day.
Tap someone else in from the
next
office.
Day. And, actually, as embarrassing as that was, I have to tell an even more embarrassing story. When I was a student prosecutor I was a student defense attorney in the public defender's office in Prince George's County, Maryland, right outside of of D.C.
You were at Georgetown at the time, right?
Yeah. I was assigned a case to try under the tutelage of a real lawyer, and I couldn't get out of the bathroom.
Oh, yeah. That's happened to a few lawyers.
And every time the clerk banged on the door and said, the judge is expecting you, in the courtroom, it got worse, and I couldn't get out of the bathroom. It must have been like a half hour until I finally came out, and the judge said, "Well, I'm happy you could join us.
Right, right. A little
You
sarcasm
think you could
there.
stay in the courtroom for a
Yes,
while?"
Yeah. I bet 9 out of 10 lawyers, first-time lawyers, have that
Oh, no,
experience.
no. It's,
you know?
listen, the nerves, it's interesting. I remember I went to acting school when I was in the DA's office at night, kind of helped me with my performances
Right.
and everything. And I remember people telling me, and there were some people who became very, very famous actors who were in some of my classes. I remember them telling me that no matter what stage you're at in your career as an actor, you develop this performance anxiety. A lot of them do, right before you go and start your scene.
Right.
And I remember, and it's still true till today, I don't know if you experience this, right before a case starts, I get these butterflies, I get this anxiety, and then the minute you start, it goes right into
away.
gear.
Right. It's a really
And
remarkable
that's
phenomenon.
after hundreds of trials.
Yeah. I just tell myself, as soon as I start talking, I'm nervous, I say, I've got this. And they just go away.
Oh, no, it
Yeah.
goes away, and then
Yeah.
you're in the groove.
Yeah, it's really nice.
great.
Right.
But it's just that starting point.
When you talked about this Judge Suglia, and you said he was a tough judge, it reminded me I had a similar experience. The first judge I was assigned to was Judge Peter Evans, very, very, very smart judge. I believe he also went to Georgetown, actually, like you. And so, I just mentioned on my third day, I get this trial, right? Well, I show up to his courtroom on day one, and there's a seasoned prosecutor there, and remember, I'm a prosecutor, he attacks her so much. Not attacks her, that's the wrong word. He demands that she be prepared and ready, right? And she wasn't. And which he has a right to do. When you go before a judge, you have to be prepared. She ran out of that courtroom in the biggest tears I've ever seen. She was so devastated, crying. I go back on day 2, so I sit through the whole court that day, all the cases. I'm observing because it's only my first day on the job. Day 2, I'm still observing. Day 3 is when they hand me the trial and say, you're picking this DUI trial in 5 minutes, and I caused the mistrial. Day 2, I go back, and there's a male prosecutor, and he's up there arguing his case, and he's not prepared. And this same judge, Peter Evans, who's brilliant and a great, great jurist, he's really, he starts asking questions. That prosecutor didn't know the answers, and he ran out of the courtroom crying. So day 3, the supervisor hands me the file and says, "Okay, you're up next." I'm like, "I'm not going in front of this judge." Are you kidding? These 2 seasoned lawyers just ran out 2 days in a row crying, so I don't want to go there. But here's a funny story I'm thinking of. We change the names a lot of times. I tend to create names of friends and family, and I'm probably going to lose all my friends and family if I keep using their names, but I have a relative named Jill, so I'm going to use Jill on this one. So Jill's a new lawyer. I hire her in my firm, and she comes to work for me, and she actually had graduated law school about 8 years earlier, and really never practiced. And she she was married. Life was good. Her husband made a really nice living, and then she went through a divorce. And she, at this moment in time, had nothing, no money, nothing. So she had to start practicing law. But she didn't have any experience because she graduated law school and never practiced. So I said, "Jill, come work with me. I'll teach you the ropes. You'll dust off the cobwebs since you were in law school, and then maybe you'll go out and find a job." So she said, "That's really nice. Thank you. Thank you." I said, "Well, I'm never letting you go to court until I've, signed off on it. I'm going to go with you. I'm going to check it out, make sure you know what you're doing, make sure you're prepared and so forth. I'll show you the ropes." So Jill said, "Great." So her first day in court. Now remember, her husband was very wealthy. She's now divorced from him, and she doesn't have money at the moment. She's got to go through the whole divorce process. Very wealthy. So she shows up in court with an outfit that probably costs $3,000, shoes, Louis Vuitton shoes that were probably $1,500, and a briefcase that was at least $5,000. It was over the top. And I look at her and I say, "Oh, Jill, come on. Prosecutors, it would take them 5 years of their salary to afford the outfit you're wearing. You can't do that. You can't show up to court like this. This is not a good look. It's going to backfire big time." "Oh, I didn't know. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. But I think it'll be okay," she says. I'm like, I don't like this, but okay, we've got to go forward. We have a hearing in 15 minutes. We go through security, And there's a lovely woman. I see her every day at the security line. And she's like, hey, Mr. Fronstin. And I say, oh, this is Jill. She's a new lawyer in my law firm. She turns to Jill and says, oh my God, I saw those shoes on Oprah's Finest last week. He says, are those the same shoes? And Jill said, yeah, they are. You saw them? Yeah, that's when I got them. I saw them on the show. And she said, girl, those are the best shoes. You come through my line anytime you want of security. So she kind of laughs and whatever. We go up to the courtroom now. And the prosecutor is a longtime female prosecutor that I know pretty well. I said, this is my new associate. Her name is Jill. She looks at the female prosecutor, looks at her and says, oh my God, Jill, that briefcase is to die for. I have never seen such a beautiful briefcase. And the outfit? What? Oh, I love your outfit. You've got style, girl. She says, tell you what case are you here on? Jill tells her the case where they're on. She says, what do you want? I'll give you anything you want. Whatever you want, Jill. It's yours. You want me to dismiss the case? I'll dismiss the case. Jill looks at me and winks and says, I told you so.
Wow.
And so, yeah. So I learned my lesson from my rookie. I said, okay, you can go on your own now. You don't need me anymore.
That's wild.
You're Free to Go is sponsored by Lang Realty, South Florida's premier residential real estate broker. Whether you're buying, selling, or renting a home or condo, Lang's experienced realtors are standing by ready to help you. Contact one of Lang's top realtors today at 561-703-2427.
Talking about showing up looking great. This is a really wild story. I was trying a case in federal court, and there were 4 defendants, and one of the defendant's lawyers had an assistant. She was a very beautiful woman, but also like Jill, she dressed to the nines. I mean, she came in the nicest outfits, always looked very professional. Just really, you couldn't stop looking at this person. Not only was she beautiful, just how she dressed compared to the rest of us schlubs.
Well, we were on a small budget back then,
That's right.
We didn't get a lot of money as government work.
We were wondering, did she come from money? We didn't know. We didn't know much about her, except the case ended up, it was a very, very difficult case, and everybody was convicted. And after the case was over, the trial was over, our clients got sentenced, somebody came up to me and told me that she was really good friends with this woman, this assistant to one of the lawyers, and that she happens to know that a friend told her that she was sleeping with the U.S. attorney during the trial.
Well, I think I know the case you're talking about.
And what happens is, immediately you begin to wonder, well, did she, working on behalf of the defense, pass information along to the prosecutor that the prosecutor could have used in violation of the defense confidentiality?
Absolutely.
And wind up and led to the conviction. So based on that, we had to give us a sworn affidavit. We filed a motion with the court to reopen the issue and to inquire. And one of the things we wanted to do was we wanted to put this woman under oath and put the assistant U.S. attorney under oath and have them questioned whether or not they were, first of all, having relations during trial, and secondly, whether any information was passed. And the judge was very reluctant to do this because, first of all, accusing a government prosecutor of doing something that's totally unethical, possibly breaching the defense confidentiality.
And we had talked in 2 episodes, I think, ago about how typically these prosecutors, especially federal prosecutors, are buttoned up really tight. They're usually very serious people.
Right.
You were on a trip out of the counther with a federal prosecutor,
right.
and they were acting wild and crazy.
Right. That was
eventually
unusual.
called you because they got arrested for
right.
something. But every once in a while you see or hear about something that's just kind of is not the norm. For
right.
These.
And so the judge was reluctant, and in fact, this particular judge had been a former federal prosecutor. Sure. So it was not something that I'm sure the judge was quick and ready to believe. But any event, after several hearings on this, we finally convinced the judge to at least do limited depositions, just asking a couple of questions. And so what happened is, turns out we were able to first ask the woman what happened, and she said yes, we did have sex, but we did have sex after the trial.
Okay.
Okay. And then we spoke to the U.S. attorney, and he admitted that they did have sex, but again, after the trial. But he explained it in a little bit more detail.
Okay, let's
He
hear the
said
detail.
that they were lusting for each other without communicating, but he could tell she was interested in him. He was certainly interested in her. And then when the jury went out
To deliberate?
to deliberate,
Okay.
he grabbed her hand, pulled her into a closet, and they had sex in a closet while the jury was deliberating.
In the courthouse.
In the courthouse while
Unbelievable.
the jury was
Right.
deliberating.
But all the evidence is over. Closing arguments are over.
So
Yeah.
it was a great story,
Yeah.
very funny. The
Yeah.
judge was just shocked and amazed.
Yes.
We were shocked and amazed, but it wasn't anything that we could use
For
to overturn the verdict of
right.
guilty.
Wow. Yeah.
Could you imagine?
Yeah.
Now,
It's-
the
it's
PS to that story is about 2 months later, I found out that the prosecutor had switched to another prosecution office on the other side of the country at the time in California. I was still here in Florida. And the assistant was immediately fired by the lawyer.
Of course.
But could you imagine that?
Yeah.
The stuff that happens in a courtroom.
Right. And it happens. Things like that happen more often than people think. But, our engineer Ben asked if there was ever like a wardrobe malfunction. I guess when I was talking about Jill, showing up in that outfit, and he thought of wardrobe malfunctions. When I was a prosecutor, I rose pretty quickly to become a supervisor, a chief prosecutor. And there was a young, it may have been his first trial, actually, now another first trial experience. And he says, "Guy, I need your help. I need your help." And so he's pre-trying his case to me in the hallway right outside the courtroom. The jury is on their way up. He's going through his opening statement with me. And while he's doing that, he wants my advice. He wants my direction. He's pacing back and forth, back and forth. He's so nervous. And he just happens to catch his pant pocket on a doorknob when he's pacing, and it rips his pants all the way down to his ankle.
Oh my God.
All the way down. It was a brand new suit, of course, just like I had my brand new suit for my first trial, and you probably did too. His brand new suit, and the jury is coming down the hallway now. His pant leg is totally open. You see his boxer shorts. It was super, super embarrassing. The good news is he was no longer nervous about the trial. That was off of his mind. All he was thinking about is, oh my
Keeping his
God.
pants
right.
on.
How am I going to keep my pants on? There was a nice clerk, clerk of court in the courtroom. She's like, "I have a bunch of pins. We'll pin it shut." And literally 45 seconds later, he's all pinned up and he's standing in front of the podium picking a jury. So he and I laugh about that all the time.
Wow.
Yeah, these
Talk
things-
about it's being mortified, really. I had a case where I was truly mortified in front of the jury. And it was a lesson learned. This was early in my career. A freighter had come into the Florida Straits and was boarded for inspection. It was a Colombian registered freighter, boarded for inspection by the Coast Guard. And as they're going through the freighter, they open a hold, and lo and behold, in the hold is an enormous amount of cocaine,
Right.
which is in, wrap packages. What's interesting is they're looking around the boat. They see the captain. They don't see any crew. One guy on this giant freighter? No, it doesn't
No,
make
it's
sense.
impossible.
So they go around, they keep searching and searching, and they come to another hold, and it's a locked hold. And they kept banging on it, and finally it's open from the inside. It's the entire crew hiding. 12 guys
right.
hiding. And they all get arrested and charged with importation of cocaine into the United States.
And by the way, our viewers need to understand, which they already do, these are real, true stories.
Oh, yeah.
They probably saw that on, one of the TV shows. That I've seen that scenario. When you watch all these crime TV shows, they come from real cases.
Oh, yeah.
So, this is a true story. It literally happened. It wasn't just made up in Hollywood. This is real.
So what happens is the captain hires a lawyer, and this is kind of early again in my career. The captain hires a lawyer, a very good criminal trial lawyer, very prominent, and I was friendly with him, and he was, I guess his client was influential with the other crew members, and so he brings me in to represent 6 of the crew members and brings in another lawyer to represent the other 6 crew members. And the only reason we were allowed by the judge to represent multiple defendants, because normally you shouldn't, there could be a conflict of interest.
Sure.
In this case, each one of them had the same exact defense, which is we were on this boat, we didn't know there was cocaine in that hold. We were just crewmen hired for the route. There were containers there of,
they don't know what's in the containers
and other things that they thought they were bringing to the port. In any event, what happens is we go to trial, and our defense simply is they didn't know what was on, and we're going to put a couple of them on to testify. They needed interpreters. And the prosecutor was a very experienced woman prosecutor, which was obviously a roadblock for us to begin with. And on top of it all, she was almost 9 months pregnant.
Oh.
So here she is in the courtroom with a belly out like this.
Oh.
And we are doing everything in our power, because we see the jury is looking at her just so sympathetically.
Sure.
We're doing everything in our power to be nice to her. She was a nice woman anyway. We all liked her, even though she was fighting against us. And by the way, that was the thing. If I always felt, as long as the prosecutor was honest, I don't care how hard a charger they were.
Right.
As long as they were honest and we could talk to each other, we could have a relationship, fine.
Right. And
I like competency.
absolutely. In fact, sometimes I'll tell my clients, or very often I'll tell them before we walk in the courtroom for the first time, I'll say, you're going to see me talking to the prosecutor. We may even laugh. You may overhear us talking about the Knicks last night.
Right.
Don't take that the wrong way.
By the way, they won last night.
I know, they're looking good, right? They still have a couple games to win, but Indiana's tough. So yeah, so it is. We have relationships with the people in the courthouse,
Right.
whether they're in opposition to us or not.
So we're pulling out the chair to help her sit down. We're doing everything in front of the jury to let the jury know that we're being kind to this woman too. Well, we tried the case. We have witnesses testify. We have our clients testify. And the prosecutor gets up at the end and makes her closing argument. The way closing arguments work is the government, which has the burden of proof, goes first. Then the defense makes their closing argument. And then the government gets a chance to do what they call a rebuttal argument. Mm-hmm. They're supposed to just simply address that which you, on the defense side, brought up in your closing arguments.
Right.
So she gets up, she makes a very good argument, and then I'm last to get up of the 3 lawyers, and I'm going through my usual closing argument and talking about what my client said. And then I say that, the prosecution is making a lot of assumptions. And they make assumptions just based on what you see on first blush. But it's not always the case. And then I say, for example, there's a movie that's out right now, and I came up with this right at the moment.
Oh, boy.
Which is the biggest mistake in the world.
It's a rookie mistake.
Rookie mistake. I said, there's a movie that's very, very, popular right now that came out called Murder on the Orient Express. And if you remember watching the movie, each time they're making you think it's this person who committed the murder, an assumption, or this person who committed the murder. But it was wrong. Just like in this case, the prosecutor's making assumptions, and they're wrong. And I'm looking over at the defense table, at the two other defense lawyers. And I swear if they had a gun or a knife,
Really?
they would have killed me right there and
Oh,
then.
boy.
And at the same time I'm saying this, I'm realizing, oh my God, I can't believe I just did this. I can't believe what I just said. I just referred to Murder on the Orient Express. Why? Because in Murder on the Orient Express, they were all guilty.
Oh, yeah.
So
Right,
I
right, right.
sit down and I'm waiting for the prosecutor to get up
And slam that
and
down your throat.
slam that down my throat.
Oh, yeah.
And she's going on and on for a few minutes and on and on and on and on. She never mentions it. And I'm going, my God, maybe she's not going to bring it up. Maybe I'm saved. And she finishes her comments and she turns around to walk back to her seat. And right before she gets to her seat, in pure Hollywood fashion, she says, oh, and by the way, in Murder on the Orient Express, they were all guilty.
Oh, she saved it for the
I died 1,000 deaths
Sure.
that time.
yeah.
And I learned a very valuable lesson, which is don't come up with stuff on the fly.
Exactly. That's how we learn. That's how we improve. That's how we became the great
Right.
lawyers that we are today, by making mistakes.
Oh, my
Right?
God. So,
you know, when you talk about, the relationship we have with the prosecutor and, holding the chair out, or we may talk to them. I mentioned how, I tell clients in advance that, hey, don't misinterpret, if I have a relationship with the prosecutor, it's actually to your benefit. Same thing happens with judges. We got to know our judge. And so there's one particular judge who is in the serious crimes. He handles the big crimes and felonies, and it's very stressful. There's a lot of tension in the courtroom, so he tries to crack jokes. He tries to lower the tension, lower the stress level by throwing humor in. And I will always tell a client before the first time we go into this particular judge's courtroom that, hey, just want to let you know, don't take it personal, don't take offense to it. His style and his intention is to throw some jokes out there to lower the stress. So I happen to be there on a very serious domestic violence case, and the victim is testifying. I'm on the defense at this point. It was way after I was a prosecutor. And the victim is going through, her testimony began with, well, me and my boyfriend went to the Outback Steakhouse, and we had a really nice dinner. And, we had a burger, we had whatever we had. And then after that, we went to this one club and we danced for like 2 hours. We had a really nice time. And then we wound up taking a long walk, and we had a great time on the walk, stopped at the beach and just sat there for a while and talked and fooled around, this, that. And we wind up, he says, why don't you come back, to my house tonight? He goes back to the house. And then out of nowhere, this is about a 2-hour testimony. So I'm just putting it in a 15-second version. But she's building up for 2 hours and then gets to the point where the violence happened, and she was sadly disfigured. He was very, very aggressive, and it was a horrible, horrible situation for this young victim. And at the end of her testimony, the judge turns to her in front of the jury and everyone in the courtroom and says, that'll teach you to go to Outback Steakhouse.
oh, my God.
Right. And he really had good intentions. He was trying, because the jury was like crying, like it was very heavy testimony. And he just tried to lower the levity of it. And, but the prosecutor looked at me, I looked at the prosecutor, and we're like, is that mistrial material? It's kind of close, it's a little inappropriate. And we went forward with the trial. But these interesting.
Oh, we had a judge in Broward County in I think the 80s and 90s.
You're going to talk about the one that pulled the gun? Judge Fleet. Remember, he pulled a gun on the defendant once, had his robe on,
right,
pulled up his robe and pulled a gun on the defendant.
We had crazy stuff that goes on. We had one judge, I won't mention him by name. I really liked him. He was wonderful. And I won't mention him by name, but those who are lawyers around here would remember him because he would wear glasses up on his forehead. Sometimes he would wear one pair of glasses up high on his forehead and another pair of glasses a little lower on the forehead. But he would make comments in the courtroom that by today's standards would get him impeached. The most absurd comments you've ever heard, things that just, were outrageous, but he got away with it. And part of it also was that his court reporter was very smart. didn't take down everything.
That's good, right? Yeah.
But
Well,
tap-
they get away. Judges do get away with a lot. Judges are great. They're prepared and they work hard and they're smart. But I have a judge I've been in front of probably 100 times, who I guess he has narcolepsy because he falls asleep during trials, during hearings. He'll turn. They sit like you see on TV, these big chairs, a big leather back to the chair. He'll swivel the chair 180 degrees, so all you see is his back. All of a sudden, the chair starts tilting backwards, toward us. And next thing you know, he's snoring.
well,
snoring.
I don't know if I told this story before, but I'm going to tell it again anyway because it talks about falling asleep in the courtroom. I was in a long trial with about 6 or 7 lawyers, and one of the lawyers was leaning his chair against the wall, and he fell asleep, and he was snoring.
Yeah.
He was snoring so hard that the jury was laughing. And finally, the judge decided he wasn't going to put up with this anymore, so he yelled his name, Mr. So-and-so, I forget the name,
Yeah.
Mr. So-and-so. And all of a sudden, he goes, oh, objection.
Well, this judge would actually, when he was snoring, the first time I was there, I didn't know what to do, so I stopped speaking. In the middle of his snoring, he said, "Continue," and I kept like, "How could he hear me when he's snoring?"
Well, the hardest thing, by the way, when jurors go out for lunch,
Oh boy, yeah.
and then they come back, and if they've eaten a big lunch, you could see some people, glassy-eyed and
Yes.
kind of like nodding out. Those are the moments you want to do things to get their attention.
Yes. Right.
You want to do things to really liven it up, because everybody goes through this. I don't know if it's a sugar drop or whatever it is.
Right. We all do. Sure.
Yeah, we all go through that.
That's
But,
why I mentioned earlier. I don't typically eat during a trial. I don't want those ups and downs of my sugar level. I want
Right. But judges, sometimes can do unexpected things. I had a case once where I only needed to get the judge to give me a continuance because we were not ready. And I knew this judge was going to give me a continuance on the case. And I show up in the courtroom that day, and that judge is not there. A different judge is on the bench, a judge that at first blush I didn't think I knew. And I could see that this judge is denying every lawyer's request for a continuance. And I'm going, oh my God, what am I going to do? And I'm trying to think how I'm going to address this. And I'm listening to everybody's failure to figure out how I'm going to come up with an argument. And this judge is ripping and tearing through every defense attorney's request for a continuance, even the state attorney's request for continuance. And he's setting them all down for trial in a week or whatever. Because he's not going to be there. He's going to load it on the judge who's coming back.
covering, yeah.
He's just there for the day. And I get up there, and I'm just trying to think, and I'm nervous as hell. And all of a sudden, I announce my appearance, and the judge looks at the audience and says, oh, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Nurik was my trial advocacy professor.
Uh-huh.
And I look at him. He looked older than me. I look at him, and I figured, what the heck? So I said, well, did I give you a good grade?
Right.
He said, well, it was okay. I said, well, then I moved to recuse the court. Kidding around, we go through some banter.
Yep.
And I said, Judge, I have a whole lengthy argument, but basically the bottom line is I need a continuance. Granted.
Love it.
He said, Mr. Nurik will set it down for 8:30 on such and such date. I said, this was in Palm Beach County. I said, Judge, I'm coming from Broward County. Is there any chance we could set it for like 9 and 9:30? I said, Mr. Nurik, whenever you get here.
Oh, yeah, whenever you arrive.
Totally unexpected.
Got to know the judge. I love that. I love it. Well, we're talking about judges, so I think I have a couple other thoughts with judges. There was a judge I was in front of when I was a prosecutor who let us call the calendar. As the prosecutor, we'd call the calendar. Every judge runs their courtroom differently. I kind of like this one because the judge was smart. He's like, when you're prepared, when the case is ready, call it, and I'll just be ready when you're ready. So this judge was a single, good-looking man, and he didn't have a girlfriend at the time, and so there was a calendar of about 40 people on it, 40 defendants, and there was only one female on the calendar that day, and she comes in the courtroom, and they all sit in the gallery, and I'm telling you, this woman is one of the most beautiful women you've ever seen. The judge calls the bailiff up to him and he says, make sure Mr. Fronstin doesn't call her to the end. I want her to be last so I can maybe visit with her at the end of the calendar. He's a single guy. Okay. So the bailiff whispers that in my ear. So I see her name on the calendar, her name. I've never met her. It's the first time she's in the courtroom. And I'm telling you, this woman was so beautiful that prosecutors and public defenders from throughout the courthouse, word got out quick that there was this gorgeous woman in our courtroom. They started coming in just to look at her. She was that beautiful. I'm telling you, there were probably 20 young prosecutors and public defenders along the wall of the courtroom just to check this gorgeous woman out. So there's about 40 people on the calendar. The judge is, I know he's excited to talk to her at the end. I'm going to call her last, and I'm calling this man, the next case, this man, the next case, this man. There's about 5 cases left, right? And I say, Your Honor, I'm now calling Florida versus George Rollins. And this gorgeous, gorgeous woman stands up and says, I'm George Rollins.
Oh, my God.
She was a transvestite.
My God.
It was
That
the
serves
best.
the judge right.
Yeah, it does, right? It was so inappropriate from him.
Wow,
Yeah.
inappropriate for him, and he got his...
And everyone that was in the courtroom, all the young public defenders and prosecutors who were there.
Oh, that's great.
No one laughed out loud, but, they were laughing inside. It was really, really, really funny.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, so we have lots of experiences.
Yeah,
I have a judge who allowed jurors to ask questions, which doesn't happen a lot, but after a witness, the judge will say, does the jury have any questions? Very unusual. And I was a defense attorney, and I had put on the head NFL referee, and it was about 2 weeks before a Super Bowl. And during the testimony, he testified that he will be the head referee for the Super Bowl in 2 weeks. And so then the judge, at the end of his testimony, he said, does anyone have any questions? And one of the jurors raised her hand and literally asked, can you get me tickets to the Super Bowl?
God.
Yeah. So I said, Judge, it's not a good idea to let them ask questions.
Yeah. That's wild.
Yeah.
The stuff that goes on in the courtroom, you have to be there. It's a truth is stranger than fiction.
That's right.
It's absolutely crazy.
We have a lot more we can talk about on this throughout.
God. I had a judge who let the jury eat during the trial in the jury box.
Oh, I've never seen.
Yeah, the case was a lengthy case. The judge wanted to get it over with.
Right.
And at some point, the judge kept cutting down the time that the jury was allowed to go out to eat.
Right.
Started at an hour, then it was 45 minutes, then it was a half hour. And the jurors started complaining. Said, Judge, there's no restaurant, no place we can eat.
Right, it's usually the case.
And
yeah,
there was a lousy little, it was an old federal courthouse, lousy little cafeteria there, and the lines were really long.
Right.
So the judge said, you know what? You can bring in your food. You can I'll let you go out for 5 or 10 minutes, but you can bring in your food and you can eat at a certain point in time during the trial. So, the thing about it is it actually worked to some degree because we were able to go through. The problem is we didn't have food.
then you
So there was this big bank of old computers. Back in the day, instead of our laptops, they had computers set up for us. And you could kind of hide behind them.
Right.
And the jury wouldn't see you. So we were bringing in food. And we were eating M&Ms. We were bringing candy. We were bringing cakes. We were bringing everything. But we didn't want the jury to see us eating because the stuff we had was even better than what they were bringing in. And we had some subs and whatever. So we were hiding behind the thing, going down like this eating. Well, the problem with that was we weren't really careful. And at least 2 occasions, I got food.
Yeah, you spilled your tie.
I stained my suits.
Yeah.
I stained my ties.
Right.
It was crazy. And at one time, what happened is, this was the craziest part of it, one of the jurors started to choke. We thought, oh, my God, they have to do a Heimlich thing. The person beside, the other juror beside, hit him hard on the back.
Oh, no.
And that was it. He was fine and whatever. Right. And the judge said, ladies and gentlemen, if you're going to eat, please eat slowly.
Oh, he had to instruct them on how to eat.
And how to eat. It was crazy. It's the only case I've ever seen where
I've never
jurors
seen that.
actually ate in the courtroom.
Right, I've seen them eat in their deliberation room
And
so
by
forth.
the way,
but,
it was a hung jury.
they wanted to come back for more food, maybe.
I don't know.
Right. So, this episode, it was a comical courtroom, episode.
Right.
And there's a lot more that we can share. Maybe next episode we'll get back to just
Crazy ass cases.
crazy-ass
I've got
cases.
one. Probably the wildest thing I've ever been involved in when I was a prosecutor. I was prosecuting a mob guy named Joey. We called him Joey Donuts.
Joey
Because he
Donuts.
brought in Dunkin' Donuts boxes every day into court, and he was offering them to the prosecution. And I told all my agents, I told everybody, no, we're not taking any donuts from him because we don't want to appear soft. And it turns out during the course of the trial, I thought that there was a contract hit on me.
Right.
And one of my agents got killed. And it was just wild what happened afterwards and how it unfolded with Joey Donuts.
Okay. All right. Well, that one I don't think I've talked to you about, so I look forward to hearing on that. And I'll talk about one where my client was accused, and well, I shouldn't say accused because he admitted to doing this. Gave someone a bow tie, which a lot of people may know from ear to ear across the neck, literally sliced his neck open. Tons of witnesses.
The Colombian bow tie.
The Colombian bow tie, right? And he admitted to it, and yet I was able to get him found not guilty.
Oh my God!
Yeah, so that'll be a fun episode next time.
Wow, that I want to hear.
Yeah. He's a happy camper.
All right, so folks, until our next episode, you are free to go.
Down Low Investigations is a sponsor of You're Free to Go. Behind every great criminal defense attorney is a great private investigator. That's why Marc and I use Down Low to investigate cases all over the country. Down Low can help you too, whether you're running a background check on an employee or running a background check on a blind date, or let's say you need someone followed or some other type of investigative work conducted. Down Low is the way to go. Call Download Investigations at 561-843-1806. Everything expressed and discussed in this episode are the opinions and experiences of attorneys Guy Fronstin and Marc Nurik and their guests. All ethical rules are complied with. Attorney-client privilege and confidential information is not shared or released during these episodes, and names, dates, locations, and other identifying information may be changed to protect confidentiality. Topics are embellished, and none of the statements made constitute legal advice and should not be considered or relied on as such.